Hey, I'm Dr. Shwini Bapat, a caregiver coach with a Pine EMD, and I'm also a palliative care doctor. And today you're watching a Pine EMD's Coffee with the Coaches, the place to be to navigate caregiving with confidence. So before we get started, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our weekly newsletter. This is where we make caregiving a little bit less stressful by sharing tips and strategies that you need to know about. And today I'm so excited to have a dear friend with me, Usha Tewari. Usha Tewari was born and raised in Orlando, Florida. She's a constituent advocate and community engager with over 17 years' experience working for elected officials at the local and federal level. While working full-time, Usha was her mom's primary caregiver until December 2021 when her mom passed away from end-stage dementia. In her spare time, she devotes herself to advancing dementia and caregiver awareness at the grassroots level. And last year, she hosted and planned a global virtual summit called Let's Talk Dementia and Caregiving, South Asian Speaks. She also serves as an Alzheimer's congressional ambassador, advocating for state and federal legislation priorities, and is actively involved with the Greater Orlando Walk to End Alzheimer's. So before we get started, make sure to smash that subscribe button so you'll always be in the know when we come out with a new video. Usha, thank you so much for being here. I guess I'm wondering, tell us more about how you stepped into your role as a caregiver for your mom.
Well, first of all, thank you, Ashwini, for having me. I really enjoy interacting. You've got a lot of great knowledge, so thank you for inviting me today. Today also happens to be my mom's 2-year anniversary since she passed away, so this is a very special day. And this show really means a lot to me, and kind of doing it in memory of my mom. But the question that you posed, how I stepped into the role as a caregiver, is a really complex one because my immediate answer is possibly about 10 years ago when my mom received a definite diagnosis of dementia. But then as I reflected these last 2 years, I think it's a lot longer. My father passed away suddenly in 1998. So my mom did well, quote unquote, for about a year or two. And then she started to display a lot of symptoms that physicians at that time classified health and depression after my father passed away. So I felt like after my father passed away, that's when I became a caregiver for her. I made a lot of professional sacrifices so I could be with her. I was frustrated with diagnosis, with what was happening. She was non-compliant with medicine. So in the sense for maybe about 10, 15 years, I was indirectly her caregiver in the sense, watching her and trying my best to figure out what was going on and to make her compliant. But I feel like my role kind of blossomed the last 10 years when she received the definite diagnosis because she became more dependent on me. She needed assistance with her mobility, gradually with dressing, with her daily tasks. And that's where I played an integral role in her care, as well as taking her to doctors. Previously, she did not like to go to the doctors. She would avoid them, not get her blood work. So to kind of keep her on track, this is when my time as a caregiver took place. And looking back the last 2 years, I have no regrets with what happened and what I did try my best and gave her all the love that I could.
Thank you for sharing that and also for sharing part of this particular day with me and with us. Um, I think that what you did for your mom over 10 years, actually, you said it's longer than 10 years. That's a very long time. And I can only imagine the amount of love and care that you provided for her over those 10 years. As you work through, I'm sure there was frustration in the process as well, right? But even through that, you were able to be there for her. What was it that got you through actually? I'm actually curious about that because caregiving is really hard. It takes a lot from you physically, emotionally. It takes from your career. It takes from your time for yourself. And oftentimes, most of the caregivers I've talked to and that I've seen, their own health is impacted by being a caregiver. So I guess my question to you is, what was it that made what helped you through that frustration and through those moments where you were like, my life has become caregiving now?
I think what helped me the most is my advocacy and being on social media. I'm a very private person, but at the same time, it was an outlet for me to share my story and to get that indirect support that I needed. When I go for when I participate in my advocacy events with the Alzheimer's Association, it's a way to share my story and share my stress with others who want to listen and in some cases who want to make a difference. So it makes me happy. I know that with dementia and Alzheimer's, there's no cure, but at least by sharing my story with others, I'm helping someone. So that's a temporary cure to what is faced on a day-to-day basis as a caregiver, especially those caring for loved ones with dementia and Alzheimer's.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story because I feel like in sharing your story, I think there are a lot of people that are going to hear this and feel less alone and less isolated with, I'm sure,
Not
the
judged and not judge you as well. That was one thing, the immediate support was not there. There were a lot of judgments, especially in our culture. So the social media is global. It's everyone. So that gave that reassuring support.
Yeah. And I think that support is so important. It's just so important, especially because a lot of caregivers do feel like they're alone in all of this. Like they have literally the world on their shoulders and they don't feel comfortable, or oftentimes they don't have um, the supports they need to actually be able to delegate, right? So having gone through the caregiving journey now, what do you wish you had known earlier on, or what do you wish you had done earlier on that could have maybe helped you? Are you loving this conversation? Then you're going to love our weekly newsletter. This is where we share tips and strategies to make caregiving just a little bit easier. You can sign up at epinemd.com/subscribe.
I think there are two things. I think the first one, asking for help. I wish I was a bit more transparent with what was going on in my life. I was did not want to share. I didn't know how people would react. The one or two times I did share it with friends, family friends, very judgmental. They said, "Oh, it's depression because your father passed away. That's why she's behaving like this." They didn't understand what I was going through as an individual. I mean, I came home from work one day, my mom threw half my clothes down in the trash and half our furniture was gone. She was just giving away things. She was giving away money. And it was very frustrating for me to explain that to family who I thought would understand. So I think, looking back, unfortunately, if I would have to go through this journey again, it would definitely be asking for help and being a bit more transparent. I think another area is financial. I was my mom's sole provider because my father passed away and she gave a lot of his money away, money that could have been used for health and investing in the long term. And caregiving is very expensive. I work full time and caring for her. So at the beginning, I was very creative. I would have, cameras. I lived in a apartment, a condominium, so there were security guards. So if she would have an issue, I would call security there. So I was very proactive. But as the disease progressed, obviously I needed help. I couldn't do everything on my own, and that basically ate up my savings. So my advice is have the difficult discussion besides, talking about aging and the healthcare desires. The financial is just as important, especially with family, to make it clear what their contribution is going to be throughout the journey and how much, caregivers are, and, the service are needed for your loved ones. Even medical equipment's expensive. If they're not eligible for Medicare, so you have to, diapers are expensive, beddings are expensive. You're constantly going, and that's an additional monthly budget that I had not forecasted. So it became very stressful, and basically savings are depleted. Could not IRA on a monthly basis. That money, everything was focused on my mom. So as a caregiver in their early stages, I would highly recommend to keep the financial picture in and plan ahead and do what's and seek what resources are available, whether it's scholarships or what benefits, depending what state you live in, um, you and your loved one are eligible for.
Yeah, those are two really great pieces of advice around asking for help. Um, Asking for help is really hard. It's really hard because I think it takes a person to acknowledge that I need help, right? And we're so used to being like, I can do it by myself. I can do it all. Um, how would you, when do you know you need to ask for help? This may seem obvious, but it really isn't.
It isn't. You're right. It is not because through the 10 years, I probably asked for help the last several weeks or maybe 2, 3 months before my mom passed away. I think that's when my friends, I really appreciate the support. They were there. If my mom would have a fall, I couldn't pick her up, then I would call them, and whoever was close by to come and help me. Um, and I think in the final stages of my mom's life, I did reach out for help when my mom was in hospice the final week. I had friends who were there throughout the day, sitting with me, bringing food, just being there for me. And for my mom meant a lot. And I wish I would have had that courage earlier during my journey to ask for it, because I think I would have had I wouldn't say little less stress, but I would have felt more comfortable, whether it be asking, family, friends, can you, I'm a little stressed, or I'm, working extra hours. Can you help me out with food or something? Or can you come visit mom, keep her company? I wish I had not. I wish I would have been more welcoming to have people over, to see her. That way they could also interact and see what she was going through as an individual.
Yeah. And so oftentimes I hear from people who, let's say they have a friend who they know is taking care of their mom, and they know their friend is stressed out and hasn't had much time to care for themselves. And they always ask me, like, how can I be helpful to this person? How can I be helpful to my friend? And what would be your advice to people who want to help and they just don't know how to? Because they'll often say things like, "Oh, let me know how I can help," and then they never hear back, and so then they they kind of take a step back. What would be your response to those people that do want to help? They just aren't quite sure how to.
I think one thing that really uplifted my spirits was a simple task like just sending a text message.
Mhm.
How are you doing? That really made my day. It put a smile on my face, gave me temporary relief. So definitely text messages or, phone calls. Sometimes it's difficult to take phone calls, but, just a little mind break makes a difference. I know food does, because it's a hit or miss with our loved ones, whether they wanted to eat or not. And, as a caregiver, everything was focused on my mom that I forgot to eat. There were several days throughout the week where I was just like, I'm too tired to eat. Or even someone can just come over and sit with your loved one for an hour while you take a nap. I know I asked my friend Peggy, I said, can you just come sit with my mom, make sure she doesn't fall or anything while I need to take like a power nap or something. So just those kinds of little gestures just go a long way, and really appreciative I know there were times where I would pay for a caregiver to come, and I was grateful for the help because I know they took good care of my mom initially before she deteriorated rapidly, where I could just go and work out or go for a walk. So those little things made a huge difference with me, and I would encourage other caregivers. It doesn't have to be complex. Just keep it simple, and just think about yourself. And even if it's 30 minutes, it's something out of the day. It's better than nothing.
That's wonderful. And so, to a caregiver that's kind of in the thick of it, is there a piece of advice or pieces of advice you have to offer that could make their life maybe a little bit less stressful, that would make them worry a little bit less, that would maybe make them feel supported?
I would suggest utilize resources. That's one thing that I did, especially um, when my mom was in the hospital, maybe 2 weeks before, 2 months before she passed away. There was talk about hospice, and there's a lot of negative connotation with hospice, but I did my research. I reached out to the Alzheimer's Association. They've got a 24/7 number and said, this is what my situation is. What would you advise? And all the feedback I got was positive, and we ended up using hospice at home and in the hospital, right, when my mom passed away. So use your resources, whether your loved ones are facing, cancer or dementia or stroke or whatever the symptom is. Reach out to the national organizations. A lot of them have an 800 number or chat bots or emails where you can share what your experiences are. And it's very comforting because I know, we don't have access to the physicians all the time, but these are actually ARP also has a comprehensive library of resources that are helpful and in a way that you're not alone. And when you have to make decisions, at least it's based on some facts and not opinions. And really makes the process easier. At least that was my personal experience.
Absolutely. And I think that there are a lot of resources, and sometimes it's still hard to actually find the right resource for you. So I think a little bit of digging and definitely reaching out to those national organizations is going to be pretty important. Um, so what is life like now? Now that your caregiving journey is over, it's, I think you said, 2 years on. So what has life been like now?
The first year, 2022, my mom passed away December 5th, 2021. From that point on, everything was a blur until maybe beginning of this year. I experienced a lot of brain fog. I lost interest in doing things. I didn't want to go out. Because of COVID, I had to use some airline tickets, for short travels. I had no interest. I don't have recollection. So I was in a really funk that I couldn't get out of. I did reach out for counseling for my grief journey, and that helped me. I encourage individuals who are going through that. I actually reached out again for counseling because November and December are very difficult times of the year. I lost my father 25 years ago, Thanksgiving Day, and my mom 10 days later, 2 years later. So this time of year is difficult, and I didn't want to fall into a depression. I know I've developed a lot of anxiety because I was always on pins and needles caring for my mom, and that's still going on. I get excited, like in the workplace, if something goes on. So I'm working on those things. I think from my health perspective, my health deteriorated rapidly the last 6 months caring for my mom, that I put on during the caregiver journey. I probably put on 40 pounds, and I had no desire even to walk. My feet would hurt, and it was very painful. So this year I kind of got back on a schedule, and I've so far lost 25 pounds. I'm working out, doing weights. My goal is to focus. I saw what my mom went through cognitively and with her balance. So I'm determined to the best of my ability to make sure that doesn't happen to me. So focusing on balancing exercises, mobility exercises to keep my muscles strong. And I've also re-engaged with individuals like you. I feel like I've got that spark again. It was really hard for me to go on social media and to see other loved ones posting what they're going through because my heart would ache. I'm a very sensitive individual, but I feel like I've become a bit stronger. So I'm hoping to, I'm planning to continue with my advocacy efforts, go to Washington, D.C. in April, representing the Alzheimer's Association to fight for federal priorities, as well as having a more prominent role in social media, in the sense sharing what I went through with my grief journey. I feel like I'm ready to share, and what I'm doing to move on to the best of my ability, but yet still be my mom's voice, because there's so many individuals out there who need to be aware and know where the resources are.
Well, I think that what you have done in just the past 2 years, not being shy about reaching for help through counseling, I think that is worthy of repeating. It's that this grief is not, you don't have to go through it alone. There are folks and professionals that can help you through that. And you're not weak for reaching out. If anything, it sounds like some of that counseling probably helped you focus on your health and start making
It has.
positive changes for yourself now. And so I think that's amazing. And now the work that you're doing in terms of your advocacy that's in the dementia space and for caregivers is clearly honoring your mom and your parents and the impact that they had on your life. So you are taking an experience that is really hard, and you're taking that experience and change. I wouldn't say transforming it, but getting more out of it as well by giving back to other people who are also going through the same thing.
Yeah,
So
you said it. It's very important for me because that's who I am as a human being. My mom wasn't able to express herself, so that's the reason why dementia awareness is very important for me. And I know that there are caregivers out there where it is a cultural issue, where they are struggling. So I hope, to help them. And then, for me, as I was mentioning to you earlier, um, the South Asian piece is very important to me because that's who I am. That's my father. Um, a lot of people, I don't talk about him, although it's been 25 years, but he was my role model and I was very close to him. So when he passed away, my grief journey has been different with both parents. It didn't hit me for a year. It felt like he was on vacation. But I think when what I was going through with my mom, I missed him the most, and I wish I would have gone for counseling. I felt like it was taboo at that time, and I didn't know how to do it privately. So that's the reason I'm very open, and I an advocate for counseling. But because he was such a passionate and always caring for India, that's why. For me, moving forward, at least once a year, it's important to have the cultural component to it because it's my way of honoring dad and through what I'm doing, honoring both my parents.
well, Usha, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your story, for getting involved in dementia advocacy and advocating for caregivers. You're, where can we find you? Because I know your social media has definitely taken off. So let us know where we can find you.
On an Instagram, my handle is the Indian Caregiver, and I've got a website. It's indiancaregiver.com. And so that I've posted some blogs on there and some resources in hopes of helping other individuals.
Wonderful. Well, Usha, thank you so much for joining us today. This was Coffee with the Coaches. And with that, we're wrapping up another episode. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What's the biggest insight you're taking away from this conversation? And how could it help you or someone you love who may be a caregiver? Let us know in the comments below. As always, the conversation happens at epinemd.com. So go there, leave a comment now. And while you're there, make sure to grab your free cheat sheet, the 10 powerful questions caregivers should be asking. These are game changers, so no more guessing what to ask the medical team. We've made that list for you, so grab it now. And with that, we're wrapping up another episode, and I'll see you in the next video.